Hello, and a very warm welcome to another session of The Change Exchange. And we have another beautiful woman. I've been doing interviews this morning, which you will see on this channel. And this is the second one today, so I am most privileged. Bronwyn Nielsen, so glad to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks very much, Rita.
100 years ago, we worked together briefly at Carte Blanche.
Yes, we did. An interesting time in my journalism career.
Yes.
One of the most valuable. And George Mazarakis will always go down in my history as one of the biggest influences in teaching me how to make good television.
How to structure a story,
Exactly.
how to find the right
Exactly.
stuff. Yes, indeed.
Can't say I didn't cry, a lot of tears, but I think that's part of the journey to getting there.
Yeah. So how and when did you decide to go into journalism? Because was not your original dream, was it?
No, it was. So
from the word go.
I was 8 years old, living on a farm in the Natal Midlands, and I used to watch Jane Hicks. I used to watch yourself and Derek and Gillian van Houten. And I decided I wanted to do the news. That was my overriding ambition. The only other thing that vied with that was potentially being a veterinarian, because I was very affair with animals and was going to go one path or the other, but the television lure was the overriding factor. And in fact, a lot of my school colleagues, or I suppose school friends, say to me today, you're the one person I know that told us all what you wanted to do from the beginning, and you've managed to follow through on it. So it was always there.
Quite
this
special.
is what I wanted to do. Basically, I don't think I had enough A's to get into Ondersteport to be a vet. So, but it was the overriding ambition to be on television.
And then what the young students and so forth always ask, how does one start? How did you start? Where did you find the door?
So during my school years, I did a lot of extramurals in drama and studied through Trinity College of London. And when I got to deciding what to do after matric, I did have a relatively academic background, and I didn't feel the need to go into journalism to Rhodes at that point. I decided to go the BCom route, Bachelor of Commerce, and went on to UCT and studied Bachelor of Commerce, with the overriding thought that it was going to give me credibility as a news reader. So I didn't sway from the fact that I wanted to be in news or in broadcast journalism. I remember phoning the SAPC desperately over that time, trying to get advice. You know, where do you start? Exactly the question that you're saying young people ask. You know, how do you start, etc., etc. And nobody could give me the answer. So I made my own way and thought, right, and you know, following that path of doing a Bachelor of Commerce did give me credibility in a very tough arena. We know how competitive broadcast is.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it certainly was one of the overriding factors, I think, when it came to deciding does she get the job or not. Well, she has got something slightly different.
She is trained in something, yes.
Exactly.
So you started in radio.
I did. 94.
Did you enjoy radio?
I loved it. I actually can't remember how my first opportunity on radio came about. My memory is now failing me. But I do remember very clearly my first bulletin. And I remember having such a dry mouth. I had to have a cup of tea next to me, and then whenever the sound bites came on, whenever the policeman, you know, superintendent, etc., said, I would take a sip of tea and try and make my mouth a little bit more moist to proceed with the rest of the bulletin. So that I do remember very, very clearly. And again, I cut my teeth on writing news, because that's part and parcel of the job. It's not just about reading a bulletin, it's about understanding how to construct a script. It was a very good training ground.
Yes, because that focuses the mind, absolutely. You only have about 3 paragraphs. Absolutely. And you have to get all the relevant stuff in there. Absolutely. Immediately. Yeah. And so it's a very good discipline.
It is a good discipline, and I think that's really held me in good stead throughout my career. Interestingly, the television opportunity came about. I did one audition, and it was with Jeremy Maggs, I remember, for an early morning television show on, I think it must have been SABC. I didn't get that job, but Astrid Askar, who had started Summer Television, saw that audition somewhere along the line, and out of the blue, while I was at Highveld, I got a call to say, would you come and audition for this new channel that we're launching?
How did you feel when you heard that?
I was, first of all, I was astounded. I was nervous.
Yes.
But I can't tell you, when I walked into that building, into the Times Media building, Jane Hicks, Tracy Bowen, Manu Pariachi, and I thought I had arrived, because Jane was the queen bee. She was like the face of business television as their kind of key anchor. And suddenly I had this position as the baby anchor on business television. And Jane was the most amazing mentor anybody could possibly have asked for. In fact, I owe a hell of a lot to the tricks of the trade that she taught me. And she really took me under her wing. And then I spent quite a lot of time with Glenn and Jane. And it turned into a really great friendship. So that's how it all started.
So what is it that for a young person out there, if you get that first job, how should you approach it? What is the secret to long-term success?
You've got to love what you do. I think there are a lot of media people, and probably resonates with you as well. I've never seen what I do as a job. I think you've got to be passionate. You've got to find your passion. And if you find your passion, you're going to be successful. I couldn't think of anything worse than going into a job for the sake of a job's sake. I think
for the sake of the check at the end of the month.
Exactly. I think then, you're on hiding to nowhere, because that is the majority of your time. I mean, you take the week is 7 days long. 5 of those days, from 8 to 5, you're generally in a work environment. So best you choose something that you really like. So that would be my advice to anybody out there, is that you will be successful if you find your passion. And you've got to give yourself the freedom to do that.
But I also hear discipline. I mean, if you say you had to learn to write news, that speaks of hours behind a desk, with many scripts either pressing delete or crumpling them up and chucking them in the bin. It's a discipline.
It is also. And when I speak to young journalists who work in the CNBC Africa fold now, my one overriding point of advice is never ask a question that you do not understand. So for me, I remember those early days when I was interviewing Paul Harris from First Rand, who was then the CEO for the results. I would spend 3 days going through the First Rand results, understanding every element of debtors and creditors. And I used to look at Jane, again Jane Hicks, who would just waltz onto the set and manage to conduct these interviews without any sense of nervousness. And that, I understand now, is experience. What I saw in her is what I feel today. I can sit down and, the very thorough process that I've gone through in understanding companies and understanding the management and the leadership styles and the people behind these companies gives me the ability to sit down now and have those conversations that I saw Jane having 15 years ago.
Well, it also gets easier. Once you've studied 10 company reports, the 11th one is easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also there's a formula.
Yes.
I always say that you can talk about yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and you can get through any interview. What happened yesterday? Where are we today? And where are we going tomorrow? Especially in the business environment. So there's a trick for anybody wanting to do the business game.
In this quite male-dominated chauvinist society of ours still, did you have a problem making people take you seriously? The captains of industry, most of whom were men 10 years ago.
I'm sure that their opinion was that I was a young blonde girl.
A poppy.
A poppy. I'm sure. I didn't think so. I thought I had done enough work to get the stripes.
And that makes the difference,
yes.
huh?
Yes.
That you don't see yourself like that.
Exactly.
And whatever they think is
irrelevant. As long as I knew what I was talking about. And I think that after a while, people started to realize that I did actually know what I was talking about. And then, their initial thoughts of me would evaporate because I was able to challenge. And you can only challenge once you really understand the subject matter.
Preparation. Oh,
it's the key.
Yeah.
And you'll always be a winner if you prepare.
What is it? Executive Director of Africa Business News. What does that entail? Is it a managerial post or is it still content?
It is. So as Executive Director, Forbes Africa, the print magazine, and CNBC Africa fall into the fold. So we've got the television and the magazine elements, and then also the digital element in cnbcafrica.com. My slant is very much still to the content side, so I'm actually editor-in-chief of CNBC Africa, and that is a demanding role. We've got an Africa-wide network, so we've got a bureau in Nairobi, we've got a bureau in Lagos, we've got a bureau in Kigali, and we broadcast 8 hours of live business content across the African continent daily. So you have to be all seeing, all over, understanding, because the risk is, as you know, you wear that title, editor-in-chief, if something goes wrong, it comes back to you.
But I hear taking responsibility.
You do need to take responsibility. The buck stops with somebody,
Yes.
and you can't blame somebody else if ultimately you are the decision maker. And a lot of what I learned and have learned in different circumstances is that you need to put processes in place that safeguard people being able to make errors on new media platforms. And that process rests with me. So it's not anybody else's fault. You just got to say then that your processes weren't right.
Oh, hard lessons. Very hard lessons. Yeah.
But Africa, I mean, talking about change, Africa is an amazing, amazing playground. It's not for sissies. It's certainly, and we've done the hard yards. I mean, we've been running a network now for 8 years. I was the second employee for the network. And I spent a lot of time in Lagos, in Nairobi, in Kigali, in Accra. So traveling the continent and understanding the business environment in each of these different countries is in itself a challenge, because nothing is, you know, there's no copy and paste solution in the 48 countries that we broadcast to in sub-Saharan Africa. There's
and you're
huge
constantly
income
aware.
disparity, and you are constantly aware of that. So I think that, and when it's right there in front of you, you realize that there's so much still that needs to be done in terms of uplifting people on the African continent, that there are many, many hard yards still to walk. What we've been very fortunate in as a network is uncovering the business story. 8 years ago, people, when we started broadcasting,
it wasn't known
Lagos,
at all.
people were
Yes.
like, no, we're not interested in Africa. What on earth are you talking to?
Another
Alice in
famine.
Kenya or Nairobi, or and now suddenly 4 years ago that changed completely. People started phoning and saying, Bronwyn, CEOs would phone and say, I'm in Lagos. Would you mind interviewing me from South Africa? Why? Because people are trying to prove now that they have feet on the ground in different African countries. And
You say very specifically 4 years ago. Why?
4 years ago, suddenly Africa became the new holy grail in terms of investment destination. If
From
people
South
were
Africa.
looking from international,
international.
and also South Africans saying suddenly, you know, maybe there isn't that much growth left in South Africa itself, so it's coming out of Nigeria, which has got 165 million people. Nairobi and East Africa is also a hugely viable investment opportunity. So I think 4 years ago, people just noticed that you could make money elsewhere in Africa. And remember,
a tipping point.
it was a tipping point. It was a tipping point.
Remember? What were you
Remember,
saying?
South Africa, you know, has been kind of the laggard in the Africa growth story. So as South Africa's story wanes, the rest of Africa has shone very brightly. And people in the business community are always looking for the next best opportunity, return on investment. And that certainly has been the rest of Africa. Although, again, you know, I say it's not easy. And we look now at MTN and what's happened with MTN and the $5.2 billion fine. And Woolworths is another example of a company that decided to spread outside of South Africa, established in Nigeria, and then basically got out of Nigeria very quickly again. So it's difficult to operate in the rest of Africa. But if you get it right, then I think you are a winner.
But so on top of all this, you are in a very close relationship. You say for 8 years. Tell me about your partner.
He is, you know, when you meet the person that you're supposed to spend your life with, that's my partner. And
What's his name?
Yeah, Harrison. We've got 2 beautiful children, Kate and Daniel. Kate is 6 and Daniel is 4. They're both September babies. In fact, myself, my daughter, and my son are all September Virgos. So my poor husband.
But you were saying when you met?
when we met, we actually met many years ago at university. So we've known each other for a very, very long time. And I had a prior marriage, which we talk about change, but it was in the early phase of my career, and I think I really did believe that you could have everything. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that you have to make sacrifices, and one of the sacrifices that I made early on in my career was sacrificing my first relationship and that first marriage.
You were just not present enough.
I wasn't present enough. You've got you've hit the nail on the head. I wasn't present. I was too, ego is one of those things that you learn. Somebody said something very pertinent to me the other day, and he said that as you learn about things that you don't like about yourself, and that you eliminate them along the way. And you say, and I think he spoke about ego and greed and anger, and that if you make decisions in any of those states of mind, you will most probably make a mistake. And I think ego was a very big part of my initial phase of life. I was very, very captured by being on camera, being on TV, having a widespread audience. But you learn.
It's an easy pitfall because the celebrity industry in this country is very small. And the moment your face becomes known, you're on the covers. And I remember being 32 or something ridiculous and being on the covers of things. And it's hard.
It is. And
hard to learn to live with that.
And I don't, I used to remember people used to tap me on the shoulder in Woolworths in Cape Town and say, gosh, you're much thinner in real life than you are on camera. And then I never knew whether there was a compliment. Is it fine to look fat on camera? Should they be telling me that actually it's the other way around? Because, and you kind of struggle with this the whole time. People feel that they can just say something to you at any stage. I mean, the game. People must have, said that to you on repeated occasions in terms of just thinking that they know you because you're in their house every Sunday.
But so, when did you and your partner get together again?
So I got divorced and kind of worked my way through my career. Then I really put head down into, I was at that time that we met at Carte Blanche. I was working at Summit. I was also operating investor relations at Dimension Data. So I was burning the candle at all ends. And sometime after that, kind of the career part just quietened down. It got a lot more controlled. I accepted the job at CNBC Africa. They were launching, and we went through a crazy launch phase where we were all getting together or getting to grips with a new television channel and new ways of doing things. And about a year into that, Ian and I reconnected, and all the career stuff had kind of settled. I was very grounded in terms of what I believe. I had grown quite a lot.
And was that also, were you aware of the choice at the time that I'm going to give this priority, which I may not have done the previous time?
Yes, because I knew that was the person that I was going to have children with. I knew.
And the kids, how did they change you?
Hugely. I was an animal person beforehand, and I really was one of those women who didn't think she was going to have children. But as I said, the defining factor with Ian was that was the man I decided if I was going to have children, it was going to be with him. So when Kate came along, I mean, as a mother, it fundamentally changes your makeup. And what I realized is that now, where previously I would have, I still am very much an animal-oriented person, but now children on the side of the road break my heart. And I can't bear the fact that a child may be alone or hurt or injured and I know that that's a fundamental change that's taking place in
priority shift.
In my own psyche. So, and that is it. It's the greatest love that you could possibly have. I think it makes you incredibly vulnerable. There's not one day that, I go through that I don't just have that fleeting second, what if something happens to one of my children? And you got to push those thoughts out of your mind. I mean, my brother died, so I know very much what it is to lose somebody in your immediate family. And
How old was he and how old was
he?
were
Was
you?
19 and I was 21.
Oh yeah.
And it destroyed my parents. So yes, it makes you vulnerable having children, and but I think that even for that vulnerability, I wouldn't change anything. So I'm a little bit more scared about everything. I do have a hell of a lot of life insurance, and that's specifically because I travel a lot through Africa. And every time I get on that plane, I think I have a sense of security. Well, it would be terrible if I didn't make it, but at least all that life insurance is going to make Ian and Kate and Daniel very comfortable. I suppose sometimes you can look at those things. And I suppose that's, life insurance. I'm probably a good advocate for life insurance.
And your home? Where do you live and what is it like and why did you choose it?
We live in Melrose North, and it's a huge property.
Big trees,
Big,
old
huge trees.
Yeah.
It's got a tennis court.
Do you play?
I play. I'm not good. But we've got a beautiful house. It was one of those where you walk in, and also this is why I know I'm with the right man, because he took me to this house. He spent months and months looking, and really the house was not something that anybody would venture into and decide that it was easy to live there. But I was very happy to go along with the story, and we had this vision, and I remember we brought a couple of people over. I don't think they quite bought into our vision because what are these people doing? Anyway, we pretty much bashed everything down, and it's white, which sounds strange with two children. Very big open windows. It feels as though you're in those trees, the old trees that you speak about. The house, when you walk into it, it's just got trees all around, and it's our perfect space. We spend a lot of time at the nursery with the kids, buying fuchsias and azaleas, and then going home and planting them on the weekends. So that's for me downtime, and it's very special to have my kids running through the nursery, and it feels very special.
You're someone who plans. So what's the picture for the next 10 years?
Yes, I'm learning actually to stop thinking about tomorrow. Whereas most of my career I started thinking about what's next, what's the next goal that I need to aim for. Now, and it sounds cliched because people say you've got to learn to live in the moment, I really think I am starting to just be happy with today. And I know the way that I can perhaps best illustrate this is that usually if I had a debate or something significant happening in a day's time, it usually preoccupies me, and then I'm not really present. You know when you said you're not present in your life? These days I am present, and it's almost a surprise when I get to executing what I need to execute. I'm not so much thinking about tomorrow. So yes, I like to plan. Right now I'm very challenged. We've got a lot we're 8 years old as a network. There are new things, new fires to put out, new mountains to conquer. And so it's not as though I'm sitting back and not progressing, but right now I'm just happy with how things are. And there's enough challenge because I do like change. I don't like to get bored, and this job, it doesn't bore me. It's keeping me, and again, it's learning how to manage people. It's taking a step back. As I am editor-in-chief, I've still got visibility on air, but it's also giving space to the younger team to come through. I've taken myself off prime time to make sure that that's not a conflict that people feel that they ever need to compete with me, and I'm running the channel from a content perspective. And those have been very grown-up decisions that I've made. So I'm enjoying that, and I'm also really enjoying nurturing new talent. So that's what tomorrow right now holds, and mostly I want to try and be a good mum. I do. Mostly I want to be a great mum. I want my kids to, at the moment I feel that I'm a little absent because I travel a lot. And
physically absent?
Physically. I try and be present when, I am when I'm there, and I've explained to you that I've stopped thinking about tomorrow and kind of more in the moment. But from a travel perspective, and perhaps I can best illustrate that with I've just come back from China. It's the third year in a row that I've hosted an Africa debate at the World Economic Forum in China. And I leave on my birthday because this is the period that it happens over, and then Kate's birthday is on the 9th, 2 days after mine. And usually I'm sitting in that hotel room knowing she's waking up without me. And I organise the balloons and the cakes and the checking with Ian, please make sure she's got this, etc., etc. But this time around, I did a little video link to myself on my iPad, and I said, right, if you're not going to listen to anybody else, then listen to yourself. Please do not accept this gig again. Here I'm telling you, you're sitting and you're lonely and you're on the other side of the world and you should be with your family. So I've got that link. Please let me listen to myself. And you know, if you don't listen to anybody else, you've got to. So please, I don't want to be sitting here again in a year's time saying, no, I went to China on my daughter's birthday. So I think that's just fundamentally, and sometimes you've actually got to, I do a lot of that. I sit down at coffee shops, if I'm having a dilemma, and people must think I'm completely insane, but I sit with my cappuccino, and then I talk to myself, and I go, really, is that as bad as you think it is? Or don't you think you should rather think about things this way? And I kind of psychoanalyze myself and come up with a solution.
Well, with that kind of life lesson, thank you very, very much. It was great. It was very good to see you again.
Thanks, Rita. Lovely to sit down with you.
Yes, and all of the very best until next time.